Good morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your company. 8:47 is the time. Let's talk right now about, well, food inflation. We've seen some latest figures. Of course, we saw inflation last week starting to go down, but actually core inflation, some of the real basic stuff, and food inflation still going up. Food inflation at 19%. Basic foodstuffs, in some cases, up 50%. Not surprisingly, we saw Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, calling on the supermarkets to cut prices. He talked about price caps. He wasn't saying he'd impose price caps, but say they should voluntarily introduce price caps on basic foodstuffs such as bread and milk to tackle the rising cost of living, particularly for those on lowest incomes. But why would that work? Why wouldn't that work? Let's talk to Mark Littlewood. He's Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. They're a free market think tank. Good morning to you, Mark.
Good morning, Julia. Good to be with you.
Good, lovely to talk to you. When I saw that story, I thought, I wonder who wouldn't enjoy this. Yes, Mark Littlewood of the Institute of Economic Affairs, I'm sure. Now, it's very appealing, isn't it? Prices are really high, particularly on a load of the foodstuffs that people really have no choice about buying. The basic, stuffs of people on low incomes, what they're going to be eating, and it's not lobster and the fancy stuff. Someone on a higher income might go. If that goes up in price, you cannot have an option to buy it or not. You need your milk, you need your bread, and some baked vegetables and the like. Why are price caps not a good idea?
Well, I mean, this policy, this approach, Julia, I can't work out whether it's trivial or wrong, but it's definitely one of the two. If the Prime Minister wants to sit down with the supermarkets and sort of say, it would be lovely if you could make milk a bit cheaper or perhaps shave a few pence off a loaf of bread, that's my advice. Well, it's a rather trivial thing because, perhaps Rishi Sunak would also like to give Tesco's advice on how to launch their new brand of shampoo.
To be fair, they do actually have legal requirements on where they're allowed to put chocolate in the store.
Well, which is similarly mad. So it's either the Prime Minister's either going to advise supermarkets on how to do their job, but only advise, or it's going to go a bit further than that, which he has not indicated he's going to do yet. They're actually going to fix prices. And price fixing doesn't work. It's a basic fail at GCSE level economics. Of course, Julia, you're right, as you said in your introduction. Everybody wants everything to be cheaper. Everybody wants to have more money. But you can't magic that into existence. You can't just halve the cost of everything and double everybody's salary. The price reflects scarcity, demand, all those sorts of things. And the minute that you make things cheaper or lower in price than they would actually be if you allowed the market to do its work, guess what? You get shortages. If we made milk 5p a pint and a loaf of bread tuppence, the supermarket shelves would be empty. This experiment was tried in extremis in the Soviet Union. Yeah. Now, I'm not quite accusing Rishi Sunak of being a communist, but he is taking a step in that direction. When you fix prices below the clearing rate of the market, you will get shortages. And I totally understand the intention. We want everybody's grocery bill to be lower. We want everybody's salaries to be higher. But the idea that the Prime Minister can fix those prices and have a good and beneficial outcome is for the birds.
And this is the thing, isn't it? I can understand, why we would expect this. And I have to say, I find it strange that the supermarkets aren't already doing this. But we know that when they have used, say, cheap milk, this much for a pint of milk in Tesco's or Sainsbury's, wherever, and they put it at an artificially low price, and you think, oh, OK, well, they'll just put prices up on other goods, but they'll get people in with lower prices for some of the basic foodstuffs. That's absolutely fine. They're entitled to do that, except what they've done is they've passed on that ridiculously absurd price below the cost of actually producing the milk to the dairy farmers, which is why they're struggling and many of them going under. We look at the plight of the dairy farmer exposed very nicely by Clarkson's Farm in that Amazon series. But this is the thing. You're in a situation where people will be expecting supermarkets to help out, and I think it's very good business for supermarkets to do that. Cut the prices on the basic foodstuffs, push them up on some of the more optional extras where people who've got a bit more money won't perhaps notice as much and it won't impact them as much. Why are the supermarkets not already doing that?
Well, Julia, if I may say so, you're sort of suggesting that the supermarkets are moving as one in a convoy of some sort.
Yeah.
One good thing about the supermarket sector is it's highly competitive. So if one supermarket, doubles the price of lobster in order to lower the price of milk, That doesn't mean that the supermarket next door will follow suit.
Yeah.
And you won't go to that supermarket. If lobster is twice the price in supermarket A, you're going to go and buy your lobster.
I don't even like lobster. I don't know why we're talking about lobster.
You're the one who put it up, Julia, not me.
I know. I was thinking of something a luxury item that most of us would never buy. That's what I was thinking of. No, but that's a fair point.
There's a competitive market in this.
And we often forget this. We often talk about how high food prices are in this country, and actually we have on average lower prices than most supermarkets in mainland Europe, don't we? And food prices as a percentage of our net take-home pay and what we actually spend is actually far lower than it used to be. I mean, people weren't fat in the 1970s because they couldn't afford to eat that much food.
No, I mean, that's right. By and large, look, I'm not trying to wish away the problem that because basic food prices have gone up, and there's high inflation in general, but on basic food in particular, I'm not trying to wish away this as being no problem. It clearly is, especially for people on tight incomes. But the food market and the supermarket sector works pretty well here. It is competitive. There is a competitive market. If Waitrose decides to put up its prices to try and gouge or rip off its customers, those customers will go to Tesco. Yeah. And if Tesco does the same, those customers will go to
And we see this, don't we? We saw the Aldis and the Lidls taking a huge chunk out of the market, basically competing with those other supermarkets that were making bigger profits. I suppose the government also, if they really cared strongly about this, they could cut costs themselves, couldn't they? They could simply, say VAT on fuel to transport foodstuffs and necessities shouldn't be so high. They're reaping an awful lot of money out of the high energy costs, which, and again, huge. We talked about energy costs for hospitality, huge energy costs for supermarkets, keeping all their freezers and their fridges cold and all the lights on and all that transport. But the government's making a fortune on fuel duty and VAT for the actual extra costs that are imposed on us. I mean, they're reaping the benefit of it.
Well, that's right, Julia. And obviously, we've been talking about the cost of living crisis for many months now, and people look at energy or food prices, these basic things. Worth bearing in mind that for almost all households, the biggest cost of living is the tax that you pay every year. Not your food bill, not your energy bill, not even your rent, but the tax you pay every year. So if we're worried about the cost of living and this government wants to do something about it, how about trying to lower that huge cost of living, the biggest single item on a typical household's budget, the amount of tax you pay? I don't know, quite the opposite. When it comes to the cost of living imposed by the government, the Conservative government has continued to dial this up to a level not seen since Clement Attlee's post-war government, the tax take as a proportion of national income. So I would much prefer Rishi Sunak and his government, rather than pontificating about what the appropriate price is for a pint of milk or a loaf of bread, to actually do a bit to lower the cost of living that he is imposing upon us all, and that would mean dialing down tax. But unfortunately, that seems to be off the agenda for this government.
Mark Littlewood, Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. There'll be people cheering away right now over their overpriced cornflakes and milk. Thank you very much indeed. Emma Revel, you were nodding away to that. That is an extraordinary stat, isn't it?